A lot of things don't add up about the Ngozi Fulani story, do they? She was born Marlene Headley, but she's changed her name more times than I've had hot dinners. Despite objecting so publicly to being asked about her origin, she doesn't exactly make it too clear, does she? Ngozi Fulani, a name that may sound all very diverse and modern to the casual observer, but it's actually a mishmash, apparently, of two distinct African ethnic groups. Some would say that's cultural appropriation. It's at least, possibly, a little bit distasteful. Aside from unashamedly ruining the reputation of the 83-year-old woman who dedicated her entire life to service of this great country, questions are now starting to be asked of the charity that Ngozi Fulani was a part of, and the rather generous salary that she may have paid herself. One man who knows of such the danger of such racial politics in the States is journalist, world-famous journalist, Andy Noah. And I'm very pleased to say, here he is. You just got a cheeky glimpse of him before I even had the chance to actually introduce him there. Andy, look, thank you very, very much for coming here. Now, it's important for me to say, we have gone to Ngozi Fulani and Charity Sister Space. We've also gone to the Charity Commission because we wanted to get their response to it. Now, Andy, before I throw to you, I want to add a little bit more context to this for our viewers, for our listeners. And anyone can freely look at a Twitter thread that was posted out yesterday. It was, and I read it with a lot of interest. Now, it's a very long Twitter thread. People can go and find it if they want, but I've got a little summary of it here. On November the 30th, obviously, Fulani published an account of meeting Lady Susan Hussey, as we all know. We all know how that went. I don't need to whiz you through that, ladies and gentlemen, do we? But when you really dive into this, and these aren't just allegations, we have put these to Ngozi Fulani. Apparently, she's a long-term ally of Diane Abbott, and, of course, with it, Jeremy Corbyn, Claudia Webb, we all remember them. And they are serious questions about the income of the Charity Sister Space and maybe where that money has gone. Their income in 2017 was £9,462, reportedly. In 2018, £14,780. Pretty modest. Well, it rose to a whopping £357,000 by 2021. But, and this is the interesting bit, despite the large sums at play here, the accounts are very, very spurious. And there are serious question marks as to exactly where some of that money may or may not have gone. And Andy, you've been obviously having a little look at this as well. Your views and your take on the Ngozi Fulani situation. A lot of people at the time thought there was more than met the eye.
Well, I think she is extremely skilled at playing the media. The story now is still being talked about for the second week now on both sides of the Atlantic. She's been all over the British press, as your viewers would know, but she's also been on a lot of mainstream American media as well. And this claim about racism from or white supremacy plays very, very well to liberal media. But what people really need to center is skepticism, actually, because now I'm not impugning the motives of this woman. However, I thought it immediately was very bizarre that such a detailed transcript was produced of this alleged conversation, and nobody has a photographic memory like that. So I wonder, was there a recording device? And I watched these interviews that Ms. Fulani has been in, and journalists haven't been asking her that. Instead, they ask her about her feelings, and of course, they tie it to attacks on the monarchy and all that. Regarding the Twitter thread, this is now the questions that should have been asked from the beginning.
It is, and just before I get you to elaborate on that again, I just want to emphasise this to people. We have gone to Ngozi Fulani for comment, we have gone to Sister Space for comment, we've gone to the Charity Commission for comment. Now, Sister Space is a charity, although it wasn't actually, interestingly, always registered as a charity. And there are numerous different things. It's too long for us to go into in the exact graphic detail of this Twitter thread. It's a very long Twitter thread, but basically it raises serious questions about some of the amounts of money that were raised by Sister Space, some of which, for example, from Comic Relief, and exactly what that money was spent on, or crucially, wasn't spent on, where that money may or may not have gone, and exactly who may have pocketed that money. And I think, as you rightly said there are serious questions being asked now, aren't there?
Yeah, so just speaking from my, I guess, the American experience of similar type of stories, we have a longer history of activists and figures in the public who make claims. And whenever that individual or organization that they represent stands to benefit financially from all the media attention, all the, sister space, you go on the website, the first thing you see is donate. One should question motives and, ask secondary questions. And regarding these accusations from the Twitter thing, this is what we should have been talking about 2 weeks ago.
So some of them include donations to help set up like a sewing class for survivors of domestic abuse. But then when it looked into it, apparently, reportedly, the sewing machines were provided, but actually people had to pay £5 to actually be a part of the sewing class and bring their own fabric. Reports that there was a huge amount of money that was brought in to try to create some form of website. Well, the allegation is that there was already a website, and actually that the website that was made in like a refurb of it would have cost nowhere near the amount of money that they're saying that it did cost as well. And also they claim that, get this, changing venues between 2019 and 2020 led to a 300% rise in their client base, which seems very, very unlikely unless they had a very small client base to begin with. And when it comes to them actually producing some of these facts and figures in inverted quotation marks, like the size of their client base and like the amount of people that they are seeing walking through their door, there appears to be little to no evidence to see how they reach those figures. And of course, a lot of those figures are used to gain funding, aren't they? And to gain charitable donations. And people have got question marks about all of that.
Well, it seems like Charity Commission should probably take a look. And without speaking specifically to these allegations of which I haven't been able to independently verify, I would just speak to the larger point, which is that I would call and urge the British to look at the lessons that many Americans have learned, particularly from many large activist groups like Black Lives Matter, who receive so much money on people thinking that people giving money based on goodwill and wanting to see actually fighting, against racism.
Well, it's interesting you should mention that, Andy, because as well it does appear that there are links to Sister Space as well as the Black Liberation Movement, which of course is a kind of offshoot, as it were, to Black Lives Matter UK. And also, again, other things that have emerged in this Twitter thread. In 2020, Sister Space claimed that their staff had undertaken IT security classes. However, the same year, they admitted that their staff didn't know how to download a video from the internet. Again, it's important to say we have gone to both the Charity Commission and we've gone to Sister Space for comment on these allegations, which raise serious questions fundamentally about, yes, the charity itself, the way that the money may or may not have been used, and everything may well be above board. Maybe it's just a little bit of interesting accounting. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to await their comments on that. But also, as well, the potential motives of Ngozi Fulani, or indeed whatever name she's decided to be called these days, and exactly what those motives might have been when she walked into Buckingham Palace. And I think your overarching point, Andy, from what I can gather, is that if something doesn't smell quite right, people have a right to be a little bit suspicious over it, and maybe the mainstream media shouldn't just fall into people's laps that easily.
Yes, I mean, look to the example of Black Lives Matter in America, where $90 million was poured in, and it was spent on buying expensive properties as well as paying for the salaries of family members of people who are co-founders of the organization. So I'm not making that accusation here about this specific one, but there are many lessons to learn from America. Don't be naive and think that, unfortunately, there are people out there willing to exploit people's rightful sentiments about racism by pushing back against that to enrich themselves.
There are people out there. Obviously, whether or not Ngozi Fulani is one of them remains a matter for discussion and debate. No doubt she would vehemently deny all of that. Andy, thank you very, very much, as ever. Andy, no, they're filling you in on these fascinating question marks when it comes to Ngozi Fulani. Questions that I think need answering about exactly where the charitable donations were taken from, where they went and what the intentions were. And I think, like a lot of people now online, calling for the Charity Commission to maybe step up and just have a little look. It may well emerge everything is completely above board, but why not have a little look? There is more than a whiff of suspicion there.